So Roger, just want to say thanks for being with us. And I know you've been a big supporter of this work, and I've been a big fan of yours since I first met you at the Silver Bay YMCA, the chaplain's retreat there. I know my first time was 2016, so I guess it's been a while, but you were already a veteran then. And so I've appreciated learning from you. So I want to kind of give you the floor a little bit just to share a little bit about yourself, your family, and then how'd you get into the YMCA?
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, I don't, Tim, you're so self-deprecating. I mean, come on. Yeah, so I'm Roger Button, VP of Community Development and Association Chaplain for the YMCA Columbia-Willamette. I've been in the Y since 2006. My wife's on the call. I've got 3 growing kids, a couple of grandkids, and we do a lot of stuff together as a family, and it's just a lot of fun.
So did you have a family when you started at the Y, or were you started at the Y, you were a young man? I mean, I just talking to some leaders, they got started in child watch. I mean, how'd you get roped into the Y?
Well, so before the Y, I was a chaplain and a pastor in a church, and every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, Tim, all us pastors would get together in one of our churches, and we'd sit down together and have coffee, and we would share and pray for each other and encourage one another. And basically what I'm just saying is that's just pastor talk, as you know, for a bunch of guys getting together and complaining nobody's going to church, right? We're running the come and see model back in the day. You come and see, you'll like it and stay. Well, the problem was nobody was coming and seeing. And so I got a little nudge from God. I got this thing where God talks to me and I yell back and say no. And then I finally say yes, which drives my wife nuts. And so I went to my elder board and I said, I think I'm going to go move out in front of the church and like do a coffee shop thing. It was back in the coffee shop days. So I did. And so I go to the coffee shop, and there's a wonderful symbiotic relationship with, they sold coffee, I drank coffee, they sold pastries, I ate pastries, thus the weight loss problem I'm always having. And people would come and visit me and they'd buy coffee and pastries. So it worked out great. After a number of months, God said, I asked you to go and be, and you just created another come and see. People were coming. So because I'm so spiritual, I just got mad and I said, fine, I'm going to call up the YMCA. And so I did. And I called the Y and they said, well, how can we help you? I said, well, is there anything I can do for the Y a few hours a week or whatever? And they said, yeah, we've got weight room monitor. And I go, what's that? And they told me, and I said, oh, it sounds wonderful. And they go, not so fast, cowboy. We need to see a resume. And I'm thinking, resume, it's 4 hours a week janitorial minimum wage. I go, okay. So I go in and I hand them my resume and they say, oh, you'd hate this. You're vastly overqualified. And I said, isn't that for me to decide? And they said, I don't think you understand. You're going to be wiping down machines people have been sweating on. I said, I can read a JD. And they said, really, you don't have a problem? I said, if Jesus Christ can wash feet, I can wipe down a sweating machine. And they said, okay, we'll give you a chance, but you can't hand out any church tracts or anything like that. Right? And so I go up that first day and there's a woman on a treadmill. I don't know how fast treadmills go because I can't run that fast. And she's just crying. So I've got somebody who's working on their body, but they're not working on their stuff, right? And so as I started wiping down machines, I started talking within 3 months, the COO for the association comes up and goes, have you ever thought about being a chaplain? I said, well, yeah, I have, because, there I was doing this stuff. It's in a burn word. And so he goes, how about the YMCA? And I thought that was compelling because I could see, right?
Yeah.
But it took a while because I had to go to the conference. You know how church stuff works. My boss had to say, okay, and so I ended up starting in the Y in 2006 as a chaplain.
So you kind of invited yourself into it.
Kind of. I just kind of followed what God was telling me to do, and I ended up there, And it was
you didn't really know how it was going to play out, other than you really felt drawn to be where people were at. And there's not a lot of places in the community where you can go and do that, where you can go and be in a space with people like that. It's
Yeah,
pretty.
just come alongside people and not be intrusive or anything, just be available. And then let God do his thing, and next thing you know, we're walking the track, praying with each other, and I'm finding out about their lives.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what would when you think about the work you were doing as a pastor, like I've been a pastor for a while too. So sometimes it becomes automatic. Like you almost don't think about kind of your strategy or practices with people to build trust, to be present with them so that, they open up, like the practice of listening. So, we got lots of great leaders on this call, but maybe they've not been through the training or, haven't been mentored in that pastoral way. So for you, when you think about what was your mindset as you kind of tried to show up in those spaces, just to be available or to be there so when people open up, that they would open up more? Like, what were some of those practices that are now intuitive, but maybe then you were really trying to be purposeful in, since it was kind of a new space?
Yeah,
How would you kind of coach some of us on that?
that's a great question. So when I was inside the church, right, I could sit on my doctrine. This is who we are. This is what we believe. You know what? And if you don't believe the same thing, if we're not a good fit, I know of a church down the road that might work better.
Mm.
Okay. The why is non-doctrinal. Okay. I work with everybody. And I I like to use this statement of, yeah, I've got my personal beliefs and opinions, but when I'm working inside the why, I'm working within the organization's
Mhm.
beliefs. And so that's how I do things. And so I'm not pushing anything. I'm meeting people where they are at, and I'm hoping they kind of follow me home. And that's what we do. And it's I spend my time doing that with I might be meeting with somebody. I was meeting with somebody yesterday about doing some volunteer work. Next thing I know, I'm in a full crisis mode with this person whose marriage is falling apart and everything else. And we're in this open space. We had to move to a different space so that we could go into this. This is what happens when you're a chaplain. This is what happens when you make yourself available.
Yeah. Yeah. I know some people are concerned. Well, I guess how did you handle when people seem to give you the cold shoulder? Or like as a pastor, I kind of learned once someone finds out I'm a pastor, you can just kind of see like a wall goes up. And
Yeah.
a variety of reasons, right? They've been hurt by other pastors, or they're suspicious, or just the unknown, or just not interested. So, and I know in the YMCA, we're very conscious about not wanting to offend people, and
Right.
it's a great trait. I mean, we don't want to go out and offend people, but sometimes the not wanting to offend people, especially as being a Christian or being known as a Christian, we can go the other way and then suppress it or be very timid about it or withheld or not confident. So for you, how have you kind of navigated? Because I know you have zero interest in purposely offending people. At the same time, I'm sure you've been around with people, you could sense that wall, and it's not a battle to be won, but just what's been your response to that? How have you kind of personally managed that when you feel like people are maybe a little put off or even offended, that you're
Yeah.
doing this work?
No, and as you know, Tim, there's nothing that shuts down a Christmas party as quick as, hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm a pastor. Boy, yeah, there's that conversation. Yeah, so literally it's not about me, and when I look at Jesus, right? When I look at Jesus, he was always out in front of the church. The only time he kind of came into the church is when he's going to correct something. You know what I mean? And so people back in the day would say, boy, I just wish Jesus would show up. I said, well, he's really already here. But if he walked through the doors, I'd be a little worried because I'm saying something wrong, you know? And so when I look at all of that, and it's not about me, I can sit with anybody with any worldview, and they may start. I'm all about the conversation. I'm not about confrontation.
Mm.
And so people that are really, really combative, it doesn't last long. They get tired of me because I refuse to engage, you know.
Yeah.
But when the conversation goes, it just doesn't matter. I mean, I'm with, believe me, I've been with every worldview. I've been with every different person that's claimed their identity and counseled them. And so it's like and that's when I know it's when they can sit with me and be safe, and I know I'm actually giving them a bit of Jesus, right? Because Roger can screw stuff up. I came from a real small town. We played half court football, and I was the only guy on the track team. So relay races were really hard, like passing
Mm.
the baton to myself. So the running joke was I could screw up a one-man relay race. So so when I'm doing it right, I can tell.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
can really tell when you're doing it wrong,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
my big thing was going back, when I went into ministry, getting fully trained, right? It's not an arrogance thing, it's a humble thing. I'm following you, God, but I don't know, and so being trained in family systems, worldviews and identities,
Yeah.
all of these things, as Molly knows, it's a help.
Yeah.
It really does help.
Well, I'll give you a chance a little later in the conversation to kind of shout out about some of the training you've made available to other chaplains and the program that Molly went through. But I did want to ask, um, how has your community changed or that region changed over the last 20 plus years? You've West Coast has gone through a lot. I've talked to Janelle Nelson. She's a little in your neck of the woods and
Yeah,
just the
she is.
changes in her own YMCA. And so I guess kind of a two-part question. How have you seen your community change? And then how has your chaplaincy work changed? And I know some of that is your chaplaincy work changes just because of length of time as you grow and your capacities and trust changes, but also just as the culture changes, community changes, you have to adjust. So maybe just kind of talk a bit over the last, kind of decade and a half, 2 decades you've been doing this.
Sure.
What's some of those changes look like, and how have you had to respond to that?
Yeah, no, that's really good. Yeah, on the West Coast, it's always been. I always said I didn't want to be the fisherman with a bunch of other fishermen. I wanted an open pond. Well, I got one out here, you know. But over the time, it's really, really, there's just been so much hurt, right? And like I say, the why we like to pat each other on the back. Look how good we are. Well, we do that in the church too, when we don't look at what we've done wrong or how we could do better, opportunities improve. And so we take a good hard look at ourselves, and we see that we know people have been hurt, and they find it's not for me to say I'm a safe space, right? How many times we come into a meeting and go, the leader's like, this is a safe space, and I'm like, yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. And so, but when people decide it's a safe space, and what I love about the work here is like our association covers 2 states, 5 counties. It's fairly large. I'm running all over, but I'm housed out of the YMCA up in Clark County, and I've got windows, and everybody's waving at me. But of all the things that we do really, really well up in Clark County, the thing that people do the best is love on people. And you can feel it, it's palpable. And even people that run through our association go, why aren't some of the other Ys like this Y? Well, because this Y embraced it, and some of the other Ys didn't. And so they're more transactional. They're more, they feel more like a Gold's Gym. They say they don't, but you walk in and they do.
Mhm.
We're here, and it became out of need. There's only one of me, so I had to start getting people to come alongside. And really, one of the big things that we did was I'm in charge of all the mission, right? Put the Christian principles of love, respect, honesty, responsibility, and practice and service into practice through our programs to build a healthy spirit, mind, and body for all. So I'm the guy that's obnoxious and goes out to the aquatics director and goes, so tell me, how do you put love, respect, honesty, responsibility, and service into practice through your program?
Mm.
And they're like, but then they learn to do it.
Yeah.
Well, healthy living, and so people walk into our Y and they join, right?
Mhm.
And the front desk has learned to ask a few open-ended questions, because what does somebody say when they join the Y? They say, well, I want to lose a little weight or get in better shape. Well, they ask the why, and I'm the 5Y guy. And next thing you know, they're in my office because there's a reason they got into the situation they're in.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and once we delve into that and that holistic health piece, emotional and spiritual being a big part of it,
Mhm.
um, we're doing it.
Yeah, that's
It's
good.
cool.
Well, that makes me think. So, part of this time together is you kind of sharing about kind of your heart and mind as a chaplain and leading chaplaincy and what it can look like in a branch. But then I think, for leaders on this call who it might be a while before they get to hire a chaplain or a chaplaincy program, but they are Christians and they want to lead as a Christian in their why. If you were given like a little seminar to like, all right, here's how to be a Christian leader in your why, to be the aroma of Christ, or be the hands and feet of Christ, or how to influence the Christian values that your why is technically said they embrace, but there's still a lot of transaction culture going on. Like, what would be kind of your coaching words to the people on this call? Just as I know you kind of get to do that in your own branch, but like, what would that look like here? What would be kind of your wisdom or advice on that?
Well, so our chaplaincy scripture is Matthew 25, right? I was hungry, you fed me. I was naked, you clothed me. When I was sick and in prison, you came and visited me. And he's when you did for the least of these, you did for me, right? That's what we do, and that's how we do it. It was really funny. So my old ED, who's now the COO out here, came up after, I think it was the Orlando conference, and went, I thought I always had you, so I didn't need to do anything. I would just have you do it. He goes, I just realized I need to be doing this too. And you're teaching everyone to do it. So it is really, yeah, I've got the title, whatever, but everybody can do this. There's nothing stopping you from walking up to somebody and engaging them. I learned more from an 8-year-old kid in an airport one day, Tim, than I have. There was a guy in a wheelchair and everybody's going by, right? And I know everybody's got but they're averting their gaze, kind of like a Monty Python, oh, I'm averting my gaze. They're not looking at him, This little 8-year-old boy walks right up, looks him in the eye and says, does it hurt? Man, if an 8-year-old kid can do that, I can do that too. And everybody can. It's just stopping. Listen, I know we're all busy. Believe me, I was talking to Tim about this earlier. I've got my calendar, which is blown out. I always like our Outlook calendars because you can color code everything. Well, there's nothing but colors on my calendar. It's just, it looks like some kind of Picasso thing. And so I'm busy. And I could just sit, but I have my calendar, but God's calendar always trumps it. And there's a lot of times I don't even make it in from the parking lot and my day's gone a whole different direction, right? Being open to that is really why are we here?
Yeah.
Why are we here at the Y? Right? I know we got to raise money and we got to do business stuff. Okay, fine. But we're here for the people. I mean, the running joke is the Y would be a lot easier to work in if it wasn't for all the people. But that's why we're here.
Yeah.
It's for the people.
Yeah.
And showing a bit of Christ to these people every day. And the thing that I always talk about, when I was a pastor inside the walls, people might see me an hour or two a week, and then, on the service on Sunday. I'm here 12 to 14 hours a day. If I'm not walking the talk, it becomes real apparent real fast.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you better be who you say you are. People are watching.
Yeah.
And so when you don't have to be the answer man. If you don't know when to refer. That's the big thing. Have a referral base, because you don't have to know everything. But boy, isn't it helpful to say, I know of a place, or I know, right?
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
You know.
So what are some of the chaplaincy programs you run over the years? Like, I know Journey to Freedom has been an important part for a lot of YMCAs, or Bible studies, or service projects, or training sessions, or just a wide variety of things. What are some of the things that you or your team has done over the years that just kind of spurring imagination for people on the call for what are some different things their Y could try when it comes to having you got a full-time chaplain on staff and you got your team. What are the different things you guys have tried over the years?
Well, that's another great question. So Richard Foster once said, there's self-righteous services. Here I am. This is what I think you need. So this is what I'm going to provide. Right.
Mhm.
And that's where you get the organizations that hand a homeless person a box of food that's got macaroni and cheese in it and a can of soup. They don't have any milk. They don't have any way of making the macaroni and cheese. They don't even have a way of opening the soup. But
Mhm.
here you go. True services. Here I am. I don't know what you need. Tell me. I don't even know if I can provide it, but I will try. So whatever it is, first thing I do is I sit and I listen. Okay. And then I see if I can do that. We've done Journey to Freedom. I love Journey to Freedom. I'm the Siskel and Ebert of group counseling, right? And at first I was like, oh, is this really? No, this works. And the groups stay together even afterwards. Scott Rial knocked it out of the park. He did a great job. We've got things available to people like Bible study. We have a church that meets here on Sunday. You know, and half the church now works in our Y. It's
Mhm.
like we're
Yeah.
like this now. I found that there was kids that were at risk for hunger when the schools hot lunch programs went down.
Mhm.
I said, we can't do that. So we started feeding kids in the summer. We partnered with an organization that gave us the lunches, and we had the space. And then we started moving. We had 4 sites going. Okay.
Mhm.
And but I was going, we're asking people to cross a food desert to get to an oasis, right?
Mhm.
And we're patting ourselves on the back because we're the Y. We're really good at patting ourselves on the back, how good we are. And I go, why don't we just take the oasis across the desert to them?
Mhm.
And so I got a bus and I put speakers on the bus like the ice cream truck, right? And everybody thought I was crazy. And I said, no, kids will come running, they'll hear it. I'm just going off of what I did when I was a kid, And of course, back then it was a wagon with a horse, but besides
Yeah.
that. And so, I mean, now we're in 2 towns.
Yeah.
We are just, we're the largest site in Southwest Washington for feeding kids. I canoe a canoe, and that's funny. It'd be like canoeing a kayak, I guess. I paddle a canoe. And I'd be out there, and you know what I always saw on the rivers and lakes was I saw all the people who couldn't afford swim lessons. And there they are, their kids are in the lake, and I'd become the automatic lifeguard, right? I'm just sitting out there in my canoe baking, watching these kids play in the water because they're not paying any attention to them.
Mhm.
I said, we can't do that. And so I said, we got to give free swim lessons. And you know what the wife said? No, we don't. That's a pay to play. I go, no, we're going to give it to them. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, I made a couple of phone calls and got the money. And that first year we gave 300 swim lessons away.
Wow.
And
Wow.
now we're working with a homeless ministry that has for women and kids. They just come. Now we do programs there. And we do programs there so the rich kids from around the community can go to their house and they're not going. I mean, it's all intentional. It's just the crazier it is, the better it is, you know? And
So I feel like you're telling me that we don't have to come up with a way to do Christian ministry or Christian emphasis in the Y, but if we just show up and just really listen and pay attention and just kind of ask or inquire, what are people saying they need? And then just ask God what to do about that. We don't have to come in with a plan on how we're going to transform people's lives.
right, right. We're building a Y in Richfield, Washington, and the ED up there is amazing. Came out of youth development, and first thing was, oh, we got to do youth programs, right? Well, you know what they actually needed because they didn't have senior programs,
Mm.
and so that's how it all started. That's where the first donations came. Long before we were doing all the youth programs, it was the seniors that needed connection, and we're learning that with loneliness. Coming out of COVID, loneliness and social isolation is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. They call it picnic in the park up there when we feed. It
Mhm.
is it's our largest site.
Mhm.
And we thought we'd be feeding hungry kids. You know where we ended up? We ended up feeding families that were hungry for community and belonging.
Yeah.
They were all showing up. They were inviting their friends. The police force would come and their family would be there. They'd stop their squad cars and eat lunch with them. And I mean, and which was really cool because especially a lot of the demographic, the police are looked at as scary. Now they're looked at as their neighbor.
So good.
You
So
know?
good.
Yeah, it's breaking down all those walls.
So is this kind of how you started the training with George Fox? Like you just kind of, as you're working to try and care for people, you had to come up with a way to just train more people. I mean, that's the program I think Molly you went through, correct, at George Fox. So how did that come about, Roger?
Well, yeah, because I didn't have enough to do, so I was
Right.
also professor at George Fox. I mean, I do have a family, I'm told.
Yeah, your wife's on the call, right? So
Yeah, I know. I'm going to hear about it.
you haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah. Hi, honey. But so my boss and I, we were sitting there at a faculty meeting one day, not listening to what the speaker was saying and getting in trouble. And what had happened was we had the prior regime, 2 regimes ago, was real good at, you love Jesus, I'll make you a chaplain, right? All you had to do was come into relationship with the CEO and he was going to make you a chaplain. And I had walked into, I'm the trauma guy. Okay, I'm the guy that goes to the drownings when the kid's drowned or somebody loses a kid with SIDS or hospice. I'm that guy. So I get to live in, you talk about first responder PTSD. Yeah, you're looking at it. I walked into a hospital after a woman had lost her baby. After one of her well-meaning chaplains just came out and said, well, maybe God needed your baby more than you did. And I looked at her and I looked at my boss after going, we need to train them up. We need to train these people up. And it's not an arrogance thing. It's a humbling thing, I mean, I was a pastor before I went into seminary and before I became a chaplain. And it kind of goes like this. I know I upset people when I say it, but it kind of goes like this. All radiologists are doctors, but not all doctors are radiologists.
Yeah.
I went through another year of training after the MDiv to get stamped, And so there's training that goes along. I'm family systems counselor. There's things that the average pastor doesn't get.
Yeah.
And you need that. And Molly will tell you. I mean, just something as simple as being able to sit comfortably inside another worldview without getting defensive or fearful or whatever is huge.
Yeah.
And that's where it is. And so we started this training. And it took us a couple of years to come up with everything. Not everybody wants to go through the MDiv. My God, my biggest fear is getting dementia. And in my last thought going, well, I want to go to seminary,
Right.
So I took everything out that, wasn't necessarily church history, human hermeneutics, all of that kind of stuff. But what did we keep? We kept the counseling. We kept the worldviews. We kept the conflict resolution pieces. We kept all of these things. And I'll let Molly talk more on that. She, I don't have to tout my own program. She can do it. But
anybody can take it, right? Or is there some prerequisites for that?
No, it's a certificate program and anybody can take it. And so it's online asynchronous, which is just a nice word for, you can do it anytime, any day. There is a spot time you've got to be there, right? Yeah. And you just go through it. It's a 2-year program and it's not the easiest thing in the world. And, I mean, one of the first things, the first people went in and went, this is hard. And I go, well, it's college. Yeah. It's a 200 level course.
Wow.
And so, I mean, you're going through it, you get your certificates, you get a Y branded certificate, says you're a Y chaplain.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Yeah. Well, just 2 more questions for you. One is managing or influencing the CEO/COO of your organization, because that role is so important for making space in a branch or association, for any kind of Christian mission. If your CEO was against your role, you probably wouldn't be there. But having a CEO that supports, faith is important. That doesn't mean you have to get a chaplain, but to agree that you're a Christian leader in your Y. Like, what's kind of your advice for how people can pray for their CEO or that C-suite, and just supporting them to support a stronger Christian presence or a stronger hands and feet of Jesus in the Y, which is also coinciding with from transactional transformational, which almost everyone says they want, but the getting there really comes from leaders in the trenches. So I guess, but the role at the top is important. What's your advice for kind of how to encourage CEOs or COs? How can people, program directors, directors, in the Y, how can they pray for them, influence them, support them from your point of view?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So before I went into full-time ministry, I was a VP of operations for a printing fulfillment company, and I would consult for Enron back in the day before they became the Sith Lord or whatever, and Xerox and Canon USA. And so they grew through acquisition. And so I would come in and I would assimilate them to the board. And every CEO would always say, if my people, I just get my people to do this, we'd be great. Well, you know what it was? I had to get the CEO to do this. And then the people followed. They will follow their leader. And so really it's you don't have to come out and be, if you don't have a chaplain or your CEO isn't for it or whatever, we're always praying for everybody, but just be open and available. And how are you doing? Does it hurt? When you come into right relationship with people, right? Then you can present a need. And just let God make the ask. God's already there.
Yeah.
You come in and they start seeing what you're doing. They like it. They do.
That's good. That's good. So maybe last question then. We have people that join these calls who might feel like they're one of a very few Christians in their Y, or they feel like, the Christians are a minority. And so they're just a little, just trying to figure out, how do I be Christ-like when there's so few of us? Can that make a difference? Or what kind of difference can that make? What would be your encouragement to them and being the hands and feet, being light when they feel like maybe there's not very many of them?
Yeah, I have a question. How many disciples did Jesus have? I think it was 12, wasn't it? And there was a whole world.
Yeah.
I think he did okay with 12. It's just literally, how when people see that, it's compelling. If it's not compelling, we're not doing it right. My biggest thing, and Lori will tell you, when I was going through cancer and I died on the chemo table and all of this stuff, but I'd come into the Y and I was just a happy duck. And all these people, they weren't all Christians. A lot of them weren't, but they'd look at me and they knew what I was going through. And they go, I don't know what you got, but I want some of that. How do you have so much peace when you're fighting for your life like this? Well, that opens a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good word. That's good.
It's like I'm from Missouri. Show me. Don't talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's a good word. I know Christianity and can have a control mentality. If we're in charge, or if we feel like the Christians are the majority or have control, we can feel better about maybe what Christ can do in that Y or that church or that part of the city. And what I hear you saying is it has nothing to do with majority or control or power. Or are those things to be aware of? Of course. I mean, they're just part of our life. But to your point of whatever the Holy Spirit is stirring in you to do, it's better just to do it and not to be worried about all those other things. God's got his work. He might let us in on a little bit.
Well, the thing of it, here, we're just talking down this thing, and I had one of my big donors. He says, you remember Dick Butkus? He played with reckless abandon. He goes, that's how you are with Christ. You just go do. And the thing of it was I started out in a different town. And the Oregonian, I hit the front page of the Oregonian, and the running joke in the community was I was the only pastor ever to hit the front page of the Oregonian that hadn't hurt a kid, embezzled money, or cheated on his wife. It was actually a good thing. Well, the ED there got really upset because her name wasn't in it wasn't in the article. Well, I said, well, they interviewed me. When I was, and so and Lori, my wife, can tell you it was a painful time. Systematically, she was trying to push us out, and she ended up pushing us out. And I was like, really? But at the same time, a foundation gave the Y a bunch of money for chaplaincy up in Vancouver. And so I just got brought right up here with Eddie. And you know what? If I'd have stayed there, it wouldn't have had nearly the impact that we had here. And so what I'll leave you with is the car of life. Is as you drive the car of life down the road of life, and you look through the windshield of the car of life, you don't get to see what God's up to. Seldom do. It's only when you glance in the rearview mirror do you get to see what he's been up to all this time. The problem with that is you can't drive the car of life down the road of life staring in the rearview mirror. You're running into a tree. It forces us to look through the windshield, and that's called faith. So, I mean, God was orchestrating all of this up here well before I ever probably, and I've been retired for years. I do this anyway. Don't tell the CEO that, he'll stop paying me. Yeah.
Good, man. Thank you. Thank you. I needed to hear that today. I really needed to hear that today. Well, thanks, Roger, for this interview and just your work and being a friend and being part of this movement. So we need you. We need a Dick Butkus on the YMCA team for what we're doing here in the United States and what we're doing as part of the global movement of the Y.